we'll launch into a little bit of a presentation. I'm going to share some holiday snap type photographs with you as well to give you an idea of what we've been doing. So my name is Katie Grant, and I have been very fortunate to be the project coordinator or project officer on Aultbea Stories for over 12 months now. Zoe, if you could advance the slide a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about the project. For those of you who haven't already heard me talk about our project, we have been seeking to help community and individual well-being in the Aultbea area through a programme of nature connection activities. We have hoped to develop an audio trail capturing some of those nature connections that we could then share and use in our community. And that's something that's still in the process of being done. But first of all, I'm going to share one of my screens with you for a moment. Right, so if you stop sharing and I'll share my screen for a second just to let everybody know. Okay, that's great. Where am I at? Here we go, share and then present. Oh, where's my presentation? There we go. Sorry about this. My techie skills are not amazing. So at the very start of the project, I wanted to find out what the community already felt about Nature Connection, because this is a community-led project. So after one of our community practices at the end of 2021, I had this lovely podcast to listen to, which was one of Lewis's podcasts about connection in the Outer Hebrides. And I think Sarah Ann had worked with you on that project and developed some very lovely postcards. So I thought, what a great idea that is. Let's send out some postcards, and our community helped develop those. Thank you to Fiona for that. And we gathered some open text responses about people's nature connections. They helped us to inform the kind of activity program we were going to have. We also used theoretical basis for making some of those things, which came from the Nature Connectedness Research Group at Derby University. So they had an idea about these pathways to connection. You can see on the screen there the 5 different pathways that they recommend. So we took ideas from the community and ideas from that model and developed a programme of activities. So I'm going to advance. Throughout that programme of activities, we've collected data in a variety of different ways. People have interviewed each other at different events. People have spontaneously shared songs and poetry about the area. We have had the postcards to reflect on and people's responses to that. This time of year in Westeros can be pretty harsh, and last year was no exception. So we had 2 storms back to back. So I thought, let's do an engagement that people can do from home. And so we had the Winter Watch, which was a at-home post-back responses engagement. We had an event as weather got better in our fantastic Aultbea Stories tent. I'm going to show you a photograph of that in a moment. And we collected oral histories from people who were willing to sit and talk to us, talk about a little bit more. So if I stop sharing for a minute, and if Zoe can pop the screen back up again, if you don't mind, Zoe. So yes, we've collected lots of different types of data, some visual data. So we've had photographs collected, we've had people create pieces of art, we've had people sharing stories, we've had people sharing poems. And that's been lovely, but it's not been without its challenges. So getting a team of community researchers to look at lots of different types of data has been quite challenging. And on the days we had people come together to look at that, that's been it was quite overwhelming, I think, in the first instance, for people who hadn't seen that mass of data and all the different types together. It also has been quite rewarding because we've seen some of the visual data and the photographs supporting some of the things that people are telling us in their stories. And we've also had a song that we've generated and sharing similar ideas to songs from the past, which has been very nice. But it also has let me know that there are some difficulties in not taking the time in a time-limited project to really focus on reflexivity going along. We've had such a packed programme of events that there hadn't been the time to reflect and perhaps adapt the programme in ways that would have incorporated more members of the community, and also catering for a pace of trust. People started to get to know what we were all about just as we were wrapping up some of the data collection stage. So that was a bit unfortunate. audio recording has been a challenge. Sometimes people have not wanted to speak to us. But then also, when we have had a community event that's been really successful, capturing data that we can then use with all that background noise, everybody leaving and chatting in the background, has been difficult. But it's also been delightful. So some of the unanticipated outcomes that we never expected to happen have been really lovely, like ongoing interest in singing and being together and getting together to share that nice joyful experience has been nice, and people spontaneously doing what we really hoped at the outset of the project, which was to take on some care for the environment. Has been really lovely. And yeah, the value of the community of practice has been great. So as I say, at the very inception, we had ideas shared by the Ideas Fund that we took forward in our project. Ongoing, I have had mentor support from other projects who've we've had breakouts with, and I've thought, oh, let's keep on. So she's not here today, but Nicola from Green Tree Arts has been really supportive, and knowing that we were at a similar stage and research has really helped. And then other ideas from other people in the groups and things like Padlet has, oh, is she here? Hi, Nicola. We haven't connected for a while, but that'd be lovely to speak to you soon. Yeah, so that's my little reflection on what I've learned about our project. Hi, Nicola. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to some of the really important people from our community who've made the project possible, which is Fiona and Jean and possibly Janet as well. So
hi, yeah, so I'm Fiona. I wear many hats. So I'm with the Community Council, and at the time I was working community outreach with Aberdeen Science Centre, and I do bits and volunteering bits with the Gale Centre. And what has been really lovely is to be a member of, just me in some of these things as well, which has been magic. When there's been all this stuff going around and trying to organise a lot of stuff for other people, I think that's one of the strengths in this project. It's been so varied that so many folk have been able to join in other ways. So I have been community member too, but I think here I'd really like to highlight and share one of the top events that we had was celebrating Boom Beach, which I think Katie's going to fling up some
pictures.
photos. Yeah, and through the stories. So Katie put together an event that involved collaboration with various nature-related organisations, the West Ross Fisheries Trust and Sea Wilding and the Little Ockroon Marine Group. And then I was there with Aberdeen Science, and we managed to through this collaboration and everyone bringing on their bits to it, we had a really good turnout on the beach. You can see us there. There was citizen science projects going on. We put a net out to capture and very gently capture and anaesthetize some of the fish. So there was buckets and kids and grannies and grandpas, able to really get close and get a really closer look at nature. And if you manage at all ever, if you want a kind of intergenerational activity, we got the loan of an underwater ROV, which is a remotely operated submarine, and that it's kind of a high-tech way of looking at nature. So there we go. We've got them. It was a chair and a blanket, because you had to kind of have you run it off your phone. We had a little practice. The kids were using a buggy to practice it, and then we had volunteers were chaperoning the ROV out at sea, so that anybody and everybody got a shot of driving this, and it was a high-tech connection with nature, and that worked really well. So it combined citizen science and the well-being and getting folk together, and I think came out of that was a real like the legacy of it is there's been this kind of uptake of a custodianship and care for the environment. So hopefully the swimmers are going to get involved in the seagrass meadow, and with the Fisheries Trust, they're talking about taking care of a fish ladder and the burn and getting involved in bug life. So it's had all these kind of extra bits happening. So that was my highlight.
We'll have a little bit of talk from Jean, who attended one of our events. I've just put up some photographs which were shared at that event of yesteryear in the Aultbea area and how nature connections have changed over time. Jean, are you there?
Yes, I'm just unmuting. I'm here now, I think. So hello everyone, I'm Jean Ross. I'm a lifelong resident of our community and recently retired as head teacher of the local primary school for 15 years. So I bring knowledge and passion for the community and also links right across, as the school was central within the community. The event that I'm going to talk about was a photographic event. Our tent, which was a huge asset to the group, was set up on the local sports field. So it was a visual symbol, something was going on. It was an absolutely beautiful day. There was tea, cakes, and we attracted a range of people from different sectors of the community. The photographs were all laid out and displayed on boards and really provided a great talking point, which we then sat outside on deck chairs, and it generated rich conversation about the lifestyles in the past and how it's changed and what we want to have now and what we would like to have in the future. So it was very rewarding. And after one of our aims after the isolation of COVID was to heal our community and make connections, and I think this activity really did that. Also, not just the people that were there, as is the way in our community, other people ask, oh, who was there? What did you see? Who said, what were the stories you talked about? So we had recordings made that are going to be shared, but also just word of mouth. And then people were interested to come back and see what the photographs, and there was a further activity of comparing the landscape picture then and a picture now. So huge changes have taken place. I see this, the other thing that I wanted to say was it's also very inclusive. There was one elderly resident who was brought by his carer by car and made his way into the tent and was really happy to see that his memories were valued. It was a very positive, happy day for him, and he made another valuable contribution to the project. So I think it was intergenerational, inclusive and enjoyable. And I myself, through that activity and some of the others, have met many new friends. At the beginning of my retirement has been enriched by making links with lots of new people that have moved into the area and renewing links with people that have lived here for a long time. I've also discovered a vast range of untapped skills amongst the people in our community, and skills that they are really keen and willing to share to make things better for everyone. So the next step I see this project as very much a beginning. Lots of good work has been achieved, but that we have uncovered huge potential for future development. I think Katie said it took a while for what was the term you used? The pace of trust, the pace of trust. And I would say that as well, that the beginning was maybe quite hard work, but as we went through and we had some of those big, positive, happy events, the trust, the interest, they picked up as well. So I think we've kick-started a realization that we have a rich community with much potential for good things. Some are already started, others in the pipeline. It's definitely opened a doorway to a brighter future.
Thank you, Jean. That was great. And of course, we couldn't have done a lot of the things that we have done without Zoe being on board. So I'm going to hand over to Zoe, and she's going to talk briefly about her experience of being part of the project too.
Thanks, Kay. I think that's a bit overly generous. I'm sure you would have been equally as successful without me. But no, it's been really great for me to be involved in this project. There's been so many different positive aspects to it. I just want to reflect on a couple of key things that I think might be useful for other people to be thinking about in their projects. The first thing is really about the challenges of a remote engagement model for these kind of projects and just changing researcher circumstances. So when the project was initially proposed and in development, I had been intending to live in Westeros in the community for my PhD research. But then for different reasons, including COVID, I ended up basically being finished that kind of period of PhD data collection, and so wasn't living in the area. And this really meant that I wasn't able to participate in all these exciting projects and activities that were going on in the community at the time. So I think this remote engagement model, it was a challenge, but I think, you know, we did overcome it with lots of regular online contact and a few kind of key in-person activities. So obviously in hindsight, it would have been nice to have been there in person for a lot more of this work. And then that kind of leads on to sort of data ownership and priorities. And I think from a researcher perspective, I think throughout we try to retain the focus on the community benefits from these activities and the community priorities. And that was a slightly different way of working than researchers might be used to. So although you might do collaborative work with communities in terms of analysing the data and kind of collecting and owning and managing the data, this was much more at a distance than the types of things that I had done previously. And I think there was a lot of benefit to that. So we held co-creation workshop. And so as well as Katie and Fiona and Jean, that really meant that local members of the community could see the data, be involved in helping make sense of the data, which is quite different from, you know, the researcher maybe analysing it individually and then reporting back. So that was a really nice co-created way of doing that. And there were some interesting things that came out of the data that I wouldn't have picked out as a researcher, but for example, Jean as a local person with knowledge of the area would be able to pull out. So that was a really valuable way of working. The changing policy and practice, I think one of the things that's come out of this work was lots of ideas for legacy and next steps and different ways of kind of maximising the impact of the research are things that I've been sort of thinking about. I think one of the things that's been important is obviously influencing provision in the local community. But certainly from my perspective, our findings have got a lot of scope to contribute to a broader legacy. And so some of the things that we're planning to try and do to maximise that impact is to write an academic paper, have a report for the community, possibly a sort of policy briefing to engage with some of those health stakeholders. And we'd like to have some knowledge sharing events as well. So maybe have like a kind of webinar on community wellbeing through nature connection. And that kind of leads on to the final point of reflection is that, you know, as Katie said, it's been a packed programme of activities. And now that we've sort of got a sense of what our kind of findings and outputs are, we really need to invest some more time in helping use those findings to shape the kind of future directions. I think some of our findings are quite novel and could really have quite a lot of impact in terms of the wellbeing research that's out there. But again, I don't know if, you know, it takes about a year sometimes to get one journal article published. So again, that's a kind of long-term time investment, and Katie and I are quite keen to work together on that, but obviously that's not the easiest thing to do when your project comes to an end. So I think those were just the key things for me to reflect on.
I just want to say a few more things about the next steps that are coming. So as I said, there were issues with the audio creation. So we had that lovely Yes Year event that Jean was talking about, but people were coming and going and cars were in the background at the area where we were doing it. And so I can't use that directly. So what we've had to do in some cases is go back and ask for re-recordings of things. That's taken a bit of extra time, but I think it'll be worth it for the audio trail in the end. We're hopefully going to be engaging with stakeholders, and at this point I'd like to thank the Gale Centre and Janet Smiles for being a key support for the project. So they've been important in terms of administration, but they're also vital in the area for providing third sector support for things like counselling and befriending. And I'm hoping that through that link I'm going to be able to give information from the project to Janet also they do planning as well in the local area. So some of the things that have been shared about the nature of green spaces and how they're helpful, that can be directly fed into Janet's organisation, into the projects that they have to hopefully help the community. So working with the Development Trust has been really quite important for me. Providing office space as well has been really useful. So hopefully we're going to be building capacity in the community, and I have already done that. So I think people have been using and thinking about some of the things we picked up through the Ideas Fund, and hopefully we'll be getting funds to develop some of the ideas that we've created as part of the project.
Can I jump in a little bit there, Katie?
Yeah, of course you can.
Just to re-emphasize to folks, so there's no way. So this idea came from community council, came from a Aultbea Area Together group. None of us had the skills to be able to run a project, to be able to employ a project officer, and but that's where our local community development trust, that's their bag, that's what they do, and they were so just fantastic in embracing our project and taking on the whole kind of the admin nitty-gritty and things, and then giving us the freedom to run with it. So there was a great kind of trust, and just that if you can work with your community development company to take on all that stuff, which they did and is their bag, it left us free to do the project. So I can't recommend working on that kind of relationship enough. It was amazing.
And also, of course, Ideas Fund was all about getting researchers together with communities, and I have very much enjoyed working with Zoe, and our Aultbea Stories project has contributed to a recent research network group for the biosphere, and I'm hoping that relationship will continue. So we've got some things that we're going to be taking forward, and I'm hoping that Zoe and other people from that network will help us support making the work that we do in the community impactful and being able to assess impact and that kind of thing. And yeah, that's been vital for us, really. So thank you for listening to us. And yeah, we've gone on a little bit over the time limit. Apologies for that.
No worries at all. First off, let everyone just join me to say thank you for that really kind of insight, I guess, virtual clapping day. Really well, just so good to hear and see. I think there's comments about the usefulness of the pictures and things like that. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I guess, yeah, we've got a couple of maybe 2 or 3 minutes for questions or any kind of reflections or things that you want to share. What I'm going to say is, in the breakout groups, what I've done now is I've arranged it so there's at least one member from the team in each of the breakout groups. So if you don't get your question in now, at least you've got someone who's involved. But yeah, any kind of immediate questions or reflections. Oh, you can also use the chat box, I should also say. Maybe, I mean, one thing that I want to throw in there, just in case anyone wants a bit of time to think of the question or not, was, yeah, I really like that. First off, I mean, the comment about the writing and the next steps, and I know obviously we're in conversation about that as well, and there may be some other things going on with the Ideas Fund, which hopefully we might be in a more better position to talk about next month, about how we might be able to support some of that, developing that kind of stakeholder and kind of change as well. But the question, I really picked up on the point around how Zoe, you were talking about Jean picked out some things that you wouldn't have necessarily thought are pertinent, and I don't know if you've got could give a bit more. Like, I'm just really intrigued about that in particular, because I think that really speaks to why these types of partnerships are so useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the example I was thinking of there was about, I think it was a local story or a reflection. It was a story about, there was a comment about a tea towel being out of a window, and it was a minor thing that I think, when you're a researcher looking at broader themes, that wouldn't have necessarily stuck out to me as something to dig into a bit more. And then Jean was able to sort of share how she remembered that, and we then had this broader conversation about how people used to use the tea towel to signal that it was time to come, and then so it was this whole bigger conversation about how people used to communicate before smartphones, and it was just, it was really interesting kind of avenue to go down that was not something that I would have, you know, picked up myself. So.
Jean, did you want to add to that? I'm intrigued.
There's just the different ways that people communicated. So if it was the supper was ready, the tea towel was waved, the kids, you know, played outside from dawn till dark. And when the tea towel went out, that was the signal, come home. So it was just an insight into a different time.
And just wanted to respond to one of the points Callum was just put in the chat. So interested to see if you've seen the research or just from the experience if there have been any friendships as part of the story sharing. So absolutely, I think Jean has said that there have been friendships that have developed, particularly within our story writing group. So one of the engagements was to write a story about nature and how our love of nature in the area with a local songwriter. And that's definitely been a slightly bearing your soul experience, I think, sometimes when we've been writing the song together. So that has strengthened connections, and I've been doing quite a bit of research and trying to get funding to continue that group about the social connection benefits of singing and how that singing the same words as other people, perhaps singing about something emotional, if you're singing an emotional song, can actually really help that sparks of friendships happen. And certainly I feel like I've become more connected within the community and developed genuine friendships with people that weren't there before. I think also that it's brought people together from perhaps two very distinct sides of our community, the multi-generational families who've lived there for a very long time, and the wave of very recent incomer people. That's what the term is sometimes used. So people who have come into the community during COVID and we've got very few social spaces in our community, and coming together to sing or coming together to do things in the environment together, whether that be having a nature walk or coming and learning about wildflowers or whatever, has brought people together. So that social space of being in the outdoors, engaging in nature, has actually forged friendships there. So yeah, that's been really good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I guess maybe just before we go into the breakouts, and thanks for responding to that, I guess Fiona or Janet or anyone else, is there anything else you want to add from your perspective? Jean, of course. Zoe. Fiona?
Yeah, just like, so I was busy banging on about our community development company. So that's Janet Miles from the Gale. It's Gaelloch and Loch Action Forum. So I don't know, Janet, if you want to say a few words about how that worked for you. It was great for us, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's we were very happy to help. I mean, we're an established organisation and we've got systems and governance in place, and it meant that we could do all the boring stuff and let Katie and Fee and the gang fly ahead with all the fun stuff and really hide some of that administrative bureaucracy behind the scenes so that it didn't put the community off. And it certainly, we had systems already in place, so it didn't take an awful lot of effort for us to do that, and we'd happily do it again for any other groups, and we have done in the past. So yeah, it worked from our point of view really well, and we're only too pleased to help.
Brilliant, thank you.